The emergency lights flashed red throughout the council building. Hana walked quickly through the long hallways, her shoes clicking on the metal floor. Something big was happening. She could feel it in the air. The other ambassadors rushed past her, their faces tight with worry. Hana was the human ambassador to the Galactic Council. Earth had joined the Council only 5 years ago. Most alien species still saw humans as newcomers, too young to understand how the galaxy really worked. Hana did not mind this. She preferred to watch and learn before speaking. She entered the main chamber and took her seat in the observer section. The room was enormous, built to hold representatives from over 50 different species. Some delegates were tall and thin like trees. Others were short and wide. Some had fur, some had scales, and some had skin that changed colors based on their moods. Hana was used to being one of the smallest people in the room. The Council Prime stood at the center podium. His name was Theralcax, and he looked like a giant insect with 4 arms and huge compound eyes. His voice boomed through the chamber without needing any microphone. "The war goes badly," Theralcax said. "The Vrakthor Empire has broken through our defensive lines in 3 sectors. They move deeper into our space every day. Our military commanders say we need more soldiers immediately, or we will lose this war within 6 months." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew the war was going poorly, but 6 months? That was much worse than anyone had thought. "We have a proposal," Theralcax continued. "The Valerian Defense Force has training academies with thousands of young cadets. These cadets are physically ready for combat. They have trained for years. We propose sending them to the front lines to reinforce our positions." Hana sat up straighter. The Valerians were a species that looked like large cats that walked on 2 legs. They were covered in fur, had sharp claws, and were natural warriors. But their cadets? Those were teenagers, not soldiers. A roar echoed through the chamber. Commander Jiwoo of the Valerian delegation jumped to her feet. She was tall and powerful, with silver stripes in her black fur. Old scars crossed her arms and face, marks from many battles. "You cannot be serious," Jiwoo said, her voice shaking with anger. "Those are children. They are 15, 16, 17 years old. Yes, they train. Yes, they learn to fight. But they are not ready for real war. They have never seen combat. They have never watched their friends die. You are asking us to send cubs into a meat grinder." Theralcax did not look away. "We understand your concern, Commander. But we are desperate. The Vrakthor will not stop. If we do not find more troops, millions will die. Perhaps billions. Your cadets are trained fighters. They are our best option." "They are children," Jiwoo repeated, her claws extended, digging into the podium in front of her. "For 3,000 years, Valerian tradition has said we do not send the young to war until they have reached maturity at 20 years old. This is not just tradition. This is sacred law. We protect our cubs until they are ready." Another delegate stood up. This one was from the Korthan species, large beings made of living rock. "Commander Jiwoo, we all respect Valerian traditions, but traditions cannot stop the Vrakthor. We need practical solutions, not ancient customs." More delegates began speaking. Some supported Jiwoo, most did not. They talked about emergency powers, about survival, about the greater good. Hana listened to them all, her face showing nothing. She thought about the Valerian cubs. She had met some of them during a cultural exchange program last year. They were bright, eager, full of energy and dreams. They wanted to be warriors like their parents, yes, but they also wanted to be artists, scientists, teachers. They were teenagers with their whole lives ahead of them. Theralcax raised one of his 4 hands. "We will vote. All those in favor of deploying the Valerian cadets to active combat duty?" Lights began appearing on the voting board. Green for yes, red for no. Hana watched the lights multiply. Green, green, green. A few red scattered among them, but not many. The galaxy was afraid, and fear made people do terrible things. The final count appeared. The measure passed by a wide margin. Jiwoo stood completely still. Her team of Valerian officers around her looked ready to fight right there in the chamber. Their tails lashed back and forth. Their ears lay flat against their heads. Their claws were fully extended. "The cubs will report for deployment in 1 week," Theralcax announced. "Transport ships will be prepared. Commander Jiwoo, you will lead them to Sector 7, where they will reinforce the defensive positions." Jiwoo said nothing. She simply turned and walked out of the chamber, her officers following behind her. Hana could hear the commander's claws scraping against the floor with each step. The session ended. Delegates began filing out, some looking relieved, others looking uncomfortable. Hana remained in her seat for a long moment, thinking. She had studied human history extensively. Earth had its own dark past with sending young people to war. Children had been soldiers in human conflicts for thousands of years. Sometimes they had no choice. Sometimes leaders made them fight. The results were always tragic. In the last big war on Earth, young people had died by the millions. After that war ended, humanity made a promise. No more child soldiers. No more sending teenagers to die for old men's decisions. It became law in every human world. Anyone who broke this law faced severe punishment. Now the Galactic Council was about to make the same mistake. They would send cubs to die, and when the cubs were gone, they would look for more young people. Eventually, they would come asking for Earth's teenagers, too. Hana stood up and left the chamber. She had work to do. Back at the human embassy ship, Hana called an emergency meeting. Her military advisor, Colonel Minho, arrived first. He was a serious man with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Behind him came Lieutenant Sumin, the intelligence officer, carrying a datapad filled with information. "Tell me about the cubs," Hana said. Sumin activated her datapad, projecting images into the air. The Valerian training program starts at age 12. Cadets learn hand-to-hand combat, weapons training, tactics, and strategy. By age 15, they are physically capable fighters. But their training focuses on traditional warfare. Honor duels, formation fighting, ancient methods that worked centuries ago. "What about the Vrakthor?" Hana asked. Minho answered this time. "The Vrakthor use modern mechanized warfare. Heavy armor, artillery, air support. Chemical weapons. They do not care about honor or fair fights. They care about winning quickly and completely. The Valerian cubs will be slaughtered." "How many cubs are we talking about?" Hana asked. "Commander Jiwoo has 43 under her direct command," Sumin said. "But there are training academies across the Valerian worlds. If this deployment succeeds, the Council will conscript thousands more." The room fell quiet. Everyone understood what was really happening here. This was not just about the Valerian cubs. This was about setting a precedent. Once the Council started using children as soldiers, they would never stop. "I need to talk to Commander Jiwoo," Hana said. "Privately. Can you arrange it?" Sumin nodded. "I will send her a message." That evening, Hana met Jiwoo at a small tea house on the orbital station. The Valerian commander sat in the corner, her large frame barely fitting in the chair. She looked tired and angry. Hana sat down across from her without speaking. A server brought them drinks. Jiwoo's was a bitter Valerian brew that smelled like burnt wood. Hana's was simple tea. "I cannot stop this," Jiwoo said finally. "I have tried everything. I filed legal protests. I contacted religious leaders. I spoke to anyone who would listen. The Council has made its decision. What if there was another way?" Hana asked quietly. Jiwoo looked at her with those large cat eyes. "What way?" "The Council needs soldiers. They will take my cubs whether I agree or not." "Not if someone else volunteers first," Hana said. Jiwoo stared at her for a long moment. Understanding slowly dawned on her face. "You cannot mean humans? Your people have no obligation to fight. You are new to the Council. You are protected from conscription." "Protected, yes," Hana agreed, "but not prevented. If we choose to fight, we can. The question is whether it would make a difference." Jiwoo leaned back thinking. "Why would humans do this?" "My cubs are not your responsibility." Hana looked into her tea. "Because Earth remembers what happens when we send children to war. We remember the cost. We promised ourselves we would never do it again. Not to our children and not to anyone else's children if we could prevent it." The two sat in silence for a while, drinking their beverages and thinking about the future. Hana spent the next 3 days gathering information. She did not sleep much. There was too much to learn and too little time. The cubs were scheduled to deploy in 4 days. Lieutenant Sumin worked around the clock, pulling data from every source she could access. She studied Vrakthor battle tactics, Valerian training methods, and Council military strategies. The picture that emerged was not good. "The Vrakthor are winning because they understand modern warfare," Sumin explained to Hana during one late-night briefing. "The Council species still fight like they did centuries ago. They line up their forces, they charge forward. They rely on individual bravery instead of coordinated tactics. The Vrakthor use artillery to break formations before they even engage. They use airstrikes to destroy supply lines. They use psychological warfare to break enemy morale. And the Valerian cubs? Hana asked. Soman pulled up training videos on her screen. Young Valerians moved through combat drills. They were fast, strong, and disciplined. But Hana could see the problem immediately. Their training was beautiful but impractical. They learned to fight with honor, to face their enemies directly, to never retreat even when retreat was the smart choice. They will die in the first hour, Colonel Minho said bluntly. He had been watching over Soman's shoulder. The Vraktor will shell their positions from a distance. The cubs will hold the line because their training says retreat is shameful. They will die without ever seeing the enemy. Hana closed her eyes. She could picture it too clearly. 43 young Valerians standing bravely in their positions while artillery rained down on them, dying for honor while their commanders watched from safety. What would we need to deploy? She asked Minho. The colonel pulled up a military assessment. Earth's 3rd Expeditionary Force is currently on training exercises near the outer colonies. 5,000 soldiers, all veterans. They have experience from the last conflict on Earth. Real combat experience, not simulation training. 5,000, Hana repeated. Against how many Vraktor? In Sector 7, where the cubs are being sent. Probably 30,000 Vraktor troops with full mechanized support. Minho paused. But numbers are not everything. The Council has had larger forces and still lost. It is about how you fight, not how many you have. Hana stood and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the orbital station stretching away into the darkness of space. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds lived and worked here. All of them were afraid of the Vraktor. All of them were willing to sacrifice the cubs to save themselves. Contact Earth Command, she said. I need to speak with the President. The call took several hours to arrange. Earth was far from the Council headquarters, and secure communications required careful setup. Finally, President Kim appeared on the screen. She was an older woman with kind eyes and a steel backbone. Ambassador, the President said, I have been following the situation with the Valerian conscription. I assume that is why you are calling. Yes, Madam President, Hana replied. I want to propose that we deploy Earth forces to the front lines. Volunteer forces, not conscripts. I believe we can prevent the cubs from being sent to die. The President was quiet for a moment. You understand what you are asking? We have worked hard to keep Earth out of this war. We have no treaty obligations, no defensive alliances. We provide medical aid and supplies, but we do not fight. That has been our policy. I understand, Madam President, but I also understand what happens if we stay silent. The Council will use those cubs. They will die. Then the Council will conscript more young people from other species. Eventually, they will ask for Earth's teenagers, too. We can stop this now, or we can wait until it is our children on the front lines. President Kim nodded slowly. You make a good point. I will need to consult with Earth Command and the Council of Nations. But Ambassador, if we do this, we do it right. I will not send our people to die in a pointless gesture. If Earth fights, we fight to win. Yes, Madam President. The next day, Hana received the answer. Earth would deploy. The 3rd Expeditionary Force was being mobilized immediately. They would arrive at Sector 7 in 6 days, but 6 days was too long. The cubs were scheduled to deploy in 2 days. Hana needed to buy time. She went back to the tea house where she had met Jiwoo. The Valerian commander was there again, sitting in the same corner. She looked like she had not slept either. Commander, Hana said, sitting down, Earth is sending forces. Real soldiers, not children. But they need 6 days to arrive. Can you delay the deployment? Jiwoo's ears twitched. The Council has given direct orders. The transport ships are already being loaded with supplies. If I refuse to board my cubs, they will arrest me and find someone else to command them. What if you do not refuse? Hana asked. What if you simply follow every regulation exactly? Check every piece of equipment thoroughly. Verify every soldier's medical records. Ensure every transport ship meets safety standards. That could take days. A slow smile spread across Jiwoo's face, showing sharp teeth. Regulations, yes. I'm known for being very careful about regulations. It would be irresponsible to send cubs into combat without ensuring everything is perfect. Very irresponsible, Hana agreed. Over the next 2 days, Commander Jiwoo became the most thorough officer in the history of the Valerian Defense Force. She inspected every weapon personally. She reviewed every cub's medical file 3 times. She found problems with 2 of the transport ships and demanded they be repaired before loading could begin. She insisted on updated intelligence briefings, additional training sessions, and detailed tactical planning meetings. the council officials complained. They threatened. They demanded she move faster. Jiwoo simply showed them the regulations and explained that she was following proper procedure. What could they say? She was doing everything correctly. Meanwhile, Colonel Minho contacted the 3rd Expeditionary Force. Major Yuna, the tactical commander, pushed the timeline. The fleet jumped early, sacrificing some safety checks to arrive faster. They shaved a full day off the travel time. On the morning of the 5th day, the transport ships were finally loaded and ready. Jiwoo had run out of delays. The Cubs stood in formation on the main dock, ready to board. They looked young and scared despite their training. Council officials stood nearby, checking the time repeatedly. News crews had gathered to record the historic moment. The whole galaxy was watching. Hana stood in the observation area above the dock. She checked her communication device every few seconds. Where were they? The 3rd Expeditionary Force should have arrived an hour ago. Theralcax, the Council Prime, walked onto the dock. He approached Commander Jiwoo. It is time, Commander. Order your cubs to board the transports. Jiwoo looked at her cubs. 43 young Valerians trying so hard to be brave. Some of them she had known since they were small children. She had watched them grow, taught them, cared for them. Now she was supposed to send them to die. She opened her mouth to give the order. Warning alarms suddenly blared across the station. Everyone looked up at the displays. Ships were entering the system. Many ships. An announcement echoed through the station. Attention. Earth military vessels are requesting permission to dock. They claim they are here to deploy to Sector 7. Theralcax turned to Hana. What is the meaning of this, Ambassador? Hana walked down to the dock level. She moved through the crowd of officials and news crews until she stood in front of the Council Prime. Humanity is deploying volunteer forces to Sector 7, she announced clearly, making sure the news cameras could hear. 5,000 soldiers, all adults, all volunteers. They will hold the defensive line. The dock erupted in confused voices. Delegates shouted questions. Officials demanded explanations. The news crews pushed forward, desperate to record everything. You have no obligation to fight, Theralcax said. You are a probationary member. You are exempt from conscription. Exempt from conscription, yes, Hana agreed, but not prevented from volunteering. Humanity chooses to fight. We choose to take the positions that you are going to give to children. She turned to look at the cubs standing in formation. Those are teenagers. They deserve to finish growing up before anyone asks them to die. Our soldiers are adults who understand what war means. They have chosen this. Let us fight instead. The news crews broadcast her words across the galaxy. Within minutes, the story was everywhere. Humans, the newcomers, the species that had stayed out of the war, were volunteering to fight in place of children. Theralcax looked uncertain for the first time since Hana had known him. The Council will need to discuss this. We cannot simply change deployment orders. Then discuss it, Hana said. But while you discuss, please do not board those cubs onto transport ships. Give us a chance to prove that adult soldiers can do what you are asking children to do. She looked at Commander Jiwoo. The Valerian. Commander's eyes were bright with something that looked like hope. Outside the station, Earth's 3rd Expeditionary Force moved into position. 5,000 soldiers prepared for deployment. Colonel Minho stood on the bridge of the lead ship, looking at the tactical displays. All units, this is command, he said over the communication system. We are going to Sector 7. The Council was going to send children there to die. We are going instead. I will not lie to you. This will be hard. The Vrakthor are good at, The Council chamber was more crowded than Hana had ever seen it. Every delegate had shown up for this emergency session. The news about Earth's volunteer deployment had spread across the galaxy within hours, and now everyone wanted to know what would happen next. Theralcax called the session to order. His compound eyes swept across the room and Hana noticed he looked tired. We are here to discuss the human deployment. Ambassador Hana, please explain your government's position. Hana stood. All eyes in the chamber turned to her. She felt small among these giants, but she spoke with confidence. Earth is sending 5,000 volunteer soldiers to Sector 7. They are all adults. They have all chosen to fight. We ask that the Valerian cubs be withdrawn from deployment until they reach proper maturity. A delegate from the Korthan species stood up. With respect, Ambassador, 5,000 soldiers are not enough to hold Sector 7. We need tens of thousands of troops. That is why we must use all available forces. including the Valerian cadets. Numbers are not everything, Hana replied. The Council has sent large forces before and still lost. Earth's soldiers are experienced veterans. They understand modern warfare. They can hold that line, can they? Another delegate challenged. Or is this just empty words from a species that has never fought the Vrakthor? Colonel Minho, sitting beside Hana, leaned forward. We have studied the Vrakthor extensively. We know their tactics. We know their weaknesses. Most importantly, we know how to fight a war. Earth has been at war with itself for most of our history. We have learned hard lessons about combat. We will use those lessons now. The chamber buzzed with conversation. Some delegates looked intrigued. Others looked skeptical. A few looked angry that humans were interfering. Commander Jiwoo stood up. I support the human proposal. My cubs are not ready for this war. They are brave, yes. They are trained, yes. But they are still children. If Earth's soldiers can hold Sector 7, we should let them try. And if they fail? Theralcax asked. If the humans cannot hold the line, we will have wasted precious time. The Vrakthor will advance further. More systems will fall. If we fail, Hana said carefully, then you can make whatever decision you think is necessary. But give us 1 month. Let our soldiers prove what they can do. 1 month? Is that too much to ask before you send children to war? The vote took 3 hours of debate. Finally, the decision came. Earth would have 30 days to hold Sector 7. If the humans succeeded, the cubs would remain in training. If they failed, the Council would proceed with the original plan. Hana left the chamber feeling the weight of what she had done. 5,000 human lives now depended on her promise. If they failed, both humans and cubs would die. The 3rd Expeditionary Force reached Sector 7 2 days later. Major Yuna stood on the bridge of the command ship, looking at the tactical displays. What she saw was not encouraging. The sector was a mess. The previous Council forces had abandoned their positions in a hurry. Equipment was scattered everywhere. Defensive positions were poorly constructed. The area was wide open to attack from multiple directions. This is worse than I expected, said Captain Deho, who commanded the mechanized company. He had been surveying the ground positions. We will need at least a week to set up proper defenses. We probably do not have a week, Yuna replied. Intelligence says the Vrakthor are planning a major offensive. They want to break through here and push toward the Council Core worlds. They know we just arrived. They will attack while we are still setting up. Captain Xiong, the combat engineer, studied the terrain maps. We can use the natural features here. This ridgeline would make a good primary defensive position. We can set up artillery behind it. The valley to the east would funnel enemy forces into a kill zone. Do it, Yuna ordered. We have 3 days maximum. Make every hour count. The human soldiers worked without stopping. They dug trenches, positioned artillery, set up sensor networks, and laid defensive mines. They worked through the day and through the night. No one complained. Everyone understood what was at stake. Lieutenant Minji coordinated the air defense systems. She had studied how the Vrakthor used air power and designed countermeasures specifically for their tactics. They like to come in low and fast, she explained to her team. They think it makes them harder to hit. We will show them they are wrong. Colonel Minho walked through the positions, talking to the soldiers. He knew many of them personally. They had served together in the last conflict on Earth. These were not green recruits. These were veterans who had seen real combat. How are you feeling? He asked one squad leader, a sergeant named Hyun. Ready, sir, Hyun replied. The Vrakthor do not know what they are getting into. They think we are like the other Council species. They will learn differently. On the 3rd night, the sensors detected movement. A lot of movement. The Vrakthor were coming. All units, this is command, Yuna broadcast. Enemy forces approaching. Estimate 30,000 infantry with armor support. Air units detected, this is it. Remember your training. Trust your squad mates. We hold this line. The humans moved to their positions. Every soldier knew their role. Every squad knew their objectives. There was no confusion, no panic. Just professional soldiers preparing to do their job. The Vrakthor attacked at dawn. Their artillery opened up first, trying to soften the human positions. Shells exploded across the defensive lines, but the humans had dug in deep. Their positions were reinforced. The casualties were minimal. Then the Vrakthor air units came in. Fast attack craft screamed across the sky, firing missiles at the human positions. This was the tactic that had broken so many Council defensive lines. But Minji's air defense systems were ready. Missiles launched from hidden positions. The Vrakthor pilots had expected primitive defenses. Instead, they flew into a wall of advanced anti-aircraft fire. 3 craft went down in the first pass. The others pulled back in confusion. Air threat neutralized, Minji reported calmly. They will think twice before trying that again. The Vrakthor ground forces advanced. Thousands of soldiers supported by heavy tanks. They moved in the standard assault formation that had worked against every Council species. The humans let them come. Yuna watched the tactical display, waiting for the right moment. The Vrakthor entered the valley, funneling into the kill zone exactly as Seong had predicted. Artillery, fire, Yuna ordered. Human artillery opened up from the ridgeline. The shells landed with precision, tearing into the packed Vrakthor formations. The enemy had expected to face scattered resistance. Instead, they faced coordinated, devastating firepower. The Vrakthor tried to adapt. Their commanders ordered a flanking maneuver. But Daeho's mechanized company was waiting. Human tanks appeared from concealed positions and engaged the flanking force. It was not a fair fight. The humans had better position, better tactics, and most importantly, better training. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Vrakthor had retreated. They left behind destroyed vehicles and hundreds of casualties. The human line had not moved. Yuna reviewed the casualty reports. 43 humans wounded, 7 killed. It was a tragedy for those 7 and their families. But it was also a miracle. The Council had expected thousands of casualties from an assault this size. Colonel Minho sent a report back to the Council. Sector 7 remains secure. Enemy assault repelled. Human forces holding position. Will report again in 24 hours. When the news reached the Council chamber, it created chaos. The delegates had not expected this. Many had already been planning how to spin the inevitable human defeat. Now they did not know what to say. Theralcax looked at the report for a long time. Finally, he turned to Hana. How did they do this? 5,000 soldiers against 30,000? They did it because they know how to fight, Hana replied simply. Not with honor or glory, but with tactics and teamwork. They did it because they are professionals who understand that war is about survival, not bravery, and they did it because they chose to be there. Back at the orbital station, the Cubs watched the news reports with wide eyes. They saw footage of the human defensive positions. They saw the aftermath of the battle. They began to understand just how unprepared they had been for what the Council had wanted to send them into. Commander Jiwoo gathered her Cubs together. This is what real war looks like, she told them. Not honor duels, not glorious charges. This is modern combat. The humans have shown us that we have much to learn, and we will learn it. But we will learn it here safely, not dying in a war zone before we are ready. One young cub named Borum raised his hand. Commander, why did the humans fight for us? We are not their species. Jiwoo was quiet for a moment. Because they believe that protecting children is more important than politics. Because they have seen what happens when you send the young to die. Because they decided that someone had to take the first step and show the Council a different way. In Sector 7, the human soldiers prepared for the next attack. They knew the Vrakthor would come again. But they also knew they were ready. They had taken the first step. Now they would see it through. The Vrakthor commanders did not understand what had happened at Sector 7. They gathered in their war room, reviewing the battle data again and again. Nothing made sense. These humans fight differently, General Krath said, his mandibles clicking with frustration. They do not charge forward. They do not try to match our strength. Instead, they use terrain. They use combined tactics. They fight like we do. His second-in-command nodded. Our intelligence said the Council species were easy to defeat. They rely on old tactics, honor codes, individual bravery. But these humans are different. They fight smart. Then we adapt, Krath decided. We will send more forces. Better forces. We will overwhelm them with numbers they cannot possibly stop. 3 days later, the Vrakthor came again. This time they brought 60,000 troops. Double their previous force. They brought more tanks, more artillery, more air support. They were not taking any chances. Major Yuna watched them coming on the tactical displays. They are committing heavily, she said to her command staff. This is their main push. If we stop this, they will have to rethink their entire strategy in this sector. Can we stop them? Captain Shung asked. 60,000 is a lot. We do not have to stop all of them, Yuna explained. We just have to make it too expensive for them to continue. War is about cost and benefit. If they lose too much taking this sector, they will go somewhere easier. She turned to her officers. Daeho, I want your armor positioned here and here. They will try to flank again. Be ready. Minji, they will definitely use air power this time. They will throw everything they have at us. Make them regret it. Seong, I need surprises. Make the battlefield work for us. The preparations took all night. The humans had learned from the first battle. They adjusted positions, set new traps, and coordinated their systems even better. Colonel Minho sent a message to all units. This is going to be harder than last time. The enemy is bringing everything. But remember, we are here by choice. We are here to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We are here to show the galaxy that there is a better way. Hold the line. Trust each other. We will get through this. The attack began before dawn. The Vrakthor started with a massive artillery barrage. Hundreds of shells fell on the human positions. The ground shook with explosions. This was not the careful, measured assault from before. This was fury, but the humans had prepared for this. They had built their positions to withstand heavy bombardment. They had created redundant command networks so losing one position would not break their communications. When the shells stopped falling, the human line was still intact. Then came the air assault. Dozens of Vrakthor aircraft swept in, launching missiles and dropping bombs. Minji's teams tracked everyone. Anti-aircraft systems lit up the sky. The Vrakthor had expected some resistance. They got complete denial of airspace. Aircraft fell burning from the sky. The survivors retreated fast, air defense holding, Minji reported. She sounded calm, but Minho could hear the strain in her voice. This was intense combat and everyone felt it. The ground assault came from 3 directions simultaneously. 60,000 Vrakthor soldiers, supported by hundreds of tanks, pushed forward. They intended to surround the human position and crush it. Yuna watched them come. She waited until they were committed, until they could not easily pull back. Then she gave orders. Human artillery struck first, targeting the Vrakthor command vehicles. Without clear leadership, the advance became confused. Then Daeho's armor hit the flanks exactly as planned. The Vrakthor had expected to flank the humans. Instead, they got flanked themselves. Sung's surprises activated. Minefields that had been carefully hidden exploded under Vrakthor tanks. Automated defense systems came online, adding their fire to the chaos. The battlefield became a nightmare for the attackers, but there were so many of them. The Vrakthor kept pushing forward, stepping over their own dead to advance. Some units broke through the outer defenses. For a moment, it looked like the line might break. Sergeant Hyan and his squad found themselves in close combat with a Vrakthor breakthrough force. There was no time for careful tactics now. Just soldiers fighting for survival. The squad worked together perfectly. They had trained for this. They trusted each other completely. The Vrakthor soldiers were individually strong, but the humans fought as a unit. They held all across the line. Similar struggles played out. Human soldiers fought with determination, born from knowing why they were there. They were not fighting for conquest. They were not fighting for glory. They were fighting to protect children from being sent to this hell. The battle lasted 12 hours. When it ended, the Vrakthor had withdrawn again. They left behind thousands of casualties and destroyed equipment. The human line still stood. This time, the human casualties were heavier. 147 wounded, 23 dead. Minho walked through the medical stations, visiting the injured. Each loss hurt. Each soldier was someone's child, someone's friend, someone who had chosen to be here. But they had held. Against impossible odds, they had held. The news spread quickly across the galaxy. The humans had done it again. 5,000 soldiers had stopped 60,000. The council species began asking questions. How were humans so effective? What did they know that no one else knew? Commander Jiwoo requested permission to visit Sector 7. She wanted to see this for herself. The council approved, and she traveled with a small group of her senior officers. When she arrived, Colonel Minho met her at the landing site. They walked through the human positions together. Jiwoo studied everything: the defensive positions, the equipment, the soldiers. Your tactics are so different from ours, she said. Valerians fight with honor. We face our enemies directly. We never retreat. But you retreat when necessary. You use tricks and traps. You attack from hiding. To us, this would be shameful. Minho nodded. We learned hard lessons, Commander. Earth has been at war for most of our history. We fought each other for thousands of years. We learned that honor does not matter to the dead. Strategy matters. Tactics matter. Bringing your soldiers home alive matters. They stopped at a memorial the humans had built. 23 names were carved into a simple stone. The soldiers who had died holding the line. Every one of these soldiers volunteered, Minho said quietly. They knew the risks. They came anyway. Not because they love war. We hate war, but we understand it. And we understand that sometimes you have to fight to protect others. Jiwoo looked at the names for a long time. If you had not come, my cubs would be here instead. Most of them would be dead now. All of them would be traumatized. You saved them. That was the idea, Minho said. Major Yuna joined them. Commander Jiwoo, would you like to see our tactical center? I can show you how we coordinate our forces. Maybe some of these methods would be useful for training your cubs. When they are old enough. Jiwoo's ears perked forward with interest. Yes, I would like that very much. My cubs need to learn modern warfare. Not to replace our traditions, but to add to them. Honor and tactics are not enemies. They can work together. Over the next few days, Jiwoo and her officers studied everything the humans would show them. They learned about combined arms tactics. They learned about using terrain. They learned about communication and coordination. They learned that winning a battle was not about being the bravest, but about being the smartest. Before she left, Jiwoo spoke with Minho one more time. Thank you, she said simply. You have given my cubs something more valuable than protection. You have given them time. Time to grow up. Time to learn. Time to become the warriors they dream of being instead of dying as children. That is all we wanted, Minho replied. Someone had to take the first step. Someone had to show the council that children should not fight. We are glad we could do that. Back at the council chambers, the debate had shifted. No one was talking about deploying the cubs anymore. Instead, they were talking about how to recruit more adult volunteers. They were talking about improving training. They were talking about learning from the humans. Daryl Cax approached Hana after one session. Your people have changed the conversation, he said. I do not know if we can win this war, but at least we will fight it the right way now. We will not sacrifice children. That is all we asked for, Hana said. The 30-day trial period passed. The human line had held for the entire time. The Vrakthor had tried 3 more assaults, each one unsuccessful. Finally, they gave up on Sector 7 and looked for easier targets. The council voted officially. The cubs would not deploy.
Age restrictions would be implemented across all council military forces.
Professional training standards would be established. Political leaders who voted to send forces into combat would be required to justify their decisions with clear military necessity. It was not perfect. Wars never are, but it was better. Much better. And it all started because someone took the first step. 1 year later, the war looked very different. The human example had changed everything. Other species started sending their professional soldiers, their trained veterans, their adult volunteers. The council military became organized, disciplined, and effective. The Vrakthor were no longer winning easily. They still won some battles, but they lost others. The war became about strategy and tactics, not just overwhelming force. Slowly, the council started pushing back. Sector 7 remained secure. The human forces were still there, now working alongside troops from a dozen other species. Colonel Minho had become something of a legend. Other military commanders came to learn from him. He taught them about combined tactics, about using terrain, about fighting smart instead of fighting hard. The Valerian cubs had continued their training, but now human advisors worked with them. Captain Seung taught them about engineering and fortifications. Lieutenant Minji taught them about air defense and coordinated systems. Major Yuna occasionally visited to conduct tactical exercises. Borum, the young cub who had asked why humans fought for them, had grown taller and stronger. He was 18 now, almost ready to graduate. He had learned more in the past year than in all his previous training combined. One day, Captain Seung was teaching his class about defensive positions. Borum raised his hand. Captain, I have been thinking about something. When Commander Jiwoo refused to board us onto the ships, she broke direct orders. She could have been arrested. Why did she take that risk? Seung smiled. Because she understood something important. Following orders is necessary in the military, but there are some orders that should not be followed. Orders that violate basic decency. Orders that harm the innocent. A good leader knows the difference, but how do you know? Another cub asked. How do you know when to obey and when to refuse? That is the hardest question in military service, Xiang admitted. There is no easy answer. You have to think about why you serve. If you serve only to follow orders, you become a machine. But if you serve to protect others, to defend what is right, then you have a compass. You can make hard decisions when you need to. The cubs thought about this. They were learning that being a warrior was about more than being strong or brave. It was about making choices, about understanding why you fight. Meanwhile, the diplomatic situation was shifting. The Vrakthor had approached the council about peace negotiations. They had not expected the war to become this difficult. They had thought conquering council space would be easy. It was not. Ambassador Hana was invited to participate in the preliminary talks. This surprised her. Humanity was still a junior member of the council. But the other species insisted. Earth had changed how the war was fought. Earth deserved a voice in how it ended. The negotiations were held on a neutral space station. Hana sat across the table from General Krath, the Vrakthor commander. He looked at her with his compound eyes, studying the small human who had caused him so much trouble. Your species is interesting, Ambassador, Krath said. You had no obligation to fight. You could have stayed safe. Yet you chose to enter the war. Why? Hana met his gaze steadily. Because the council was about to make a terrible mistake. Because children should not fight wars. Because someone had to show that there was another way. Krath made a sound that might have been a laugh. You cost me many soldiers. Your tactics at Sector 7 were impressive. My commanders studied those battles. They had to completely change how they fight council forces after that. Then you understand, Hana said. War is not about bravery or honor. It is about who fights smarter. The council was losing because they did not understand modern warfare. We showed them. Now they do. The negotiations took months. There were many difficult moments. Many times it seemed like the talks would fail. But slowly an agreement took shape. The Vrakthor would withdraw from conquered territory. The council would agree to trade relationships. Both sides would establish a neutral zone between their spaces. It was not perfect. Some species felt the Vrakthor should be punished more severely. Others worried about future conflicts. But it was peace, and peace was what everyone needed. The formal treaty signing was held at council headquarters. Representatives from every species attended. News crews from across the galaxy recorded the moment. It was historic. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Hana stood with Commander Jiwoo, watching the crowds of delegates celebrating. The Valerian commander looked different now. Less angry. More peaceful. My cubs graduate next month, Jiwoo said. All 43 of them. They are 20 years old now. Proper adults. Ready to serve. Because of you, they lived to reach this day. Because of many people, Hana corrected gently. You refused to board them. Colonel Minho and his soldiers held the line. The council eventually made the right choice. It was many small decisions by many people. But you took the first step, Jiwoo insisted. That is what I tell my cubs. Someone has to go first. Someone has to be brave enough to try something different. You did that. Colonel Minho joined them carrying a glass of something that looked like juice but probably was not. Congratulations on the peace, Ambassador. You helped make this happen. So did you, Hana replied. Your soldiers did the hard part. They actually fought the battles. Minho shook his head. We did our job. But the job needed doing because you made sure it was the right job. You made sure we were protecting cubs, not fighting alongside them. Theral Cax, the Council Prime, approached their group. He looked tired but satisfied. Ambassador Hana, I wanted to thank you personally. When you first proposed that humans would fight instead of the cubs, I thought it was foolish. I thought you were making a mistake. I was wrong. You were desperate, Hana said. Desperate people make poor choices. We just gave you a better option. It was more than that, Theral Cax said. You showed us what we had become. We were so afraid of losing that we were willing to sacrifice our principles, our children. You reminded us that some things are more important than winning. Several months after the peace treaty, Hana attended the graduation ceremony for Commander Jiwoo's cubs. They were cubs no longer. They were full warriors now, ready to serve their people. The ceremony was beautiful. The young Valerians stood in perfect formation, wearing their armor with pride. They recited their oaths, promising to defend their people and uphold honor. But now their oaths also included promises to protect the young, to fight only when necessary, and to value wisdom as much as courage. After the ceremony, Borum approached Hana. He was fully grown now, tall and strong with the bearing of a professional soldier, but his eyes still held curiosity and kindness. "Ambassador," he said, "I wanted to thank you. A year ago I asked you why humans fought for us. You said it was because someone had to take the first step. I understand that better now. I understand that the hardest thing is not fighting. It is choosing when to fight and why to fight. You taught us that," Hana smiled. "What will you do now that you are a warrior?" "I have been assigned to joint training operations," Borum replied. "I will work with soldiers from other species, including humans. We are building a new kind of military for the Council, one that learns from everyone. One that values training and tactics, not just bravery." "That sounds like exactly what the galaxy needs," Hana said. As the celebration continued, Hana found a quiet corner and looked out at the stars. She thought about everything that had happened. One decision to speak up in the Council. One offer to deploy Earth's forces. One stand by Commander Jiwoo. Together, these moments had changed the course of the war and perhaps the future of the galaxy. President Kim contacted her later that evening. "Ambassador, I have been reviewing the reports from the past year. Earth's involvement in this war cost us. We lost good people. We spent resources we could have used at home. Some people are asking if it was worth it." Hana thought carefully before answering. "Madam President, we saved 43 cubs from certain death. We prevented the Council from creating a system where children become soldiers. We showed the galaxy that humanity stands for something. We took the first step when no one else would. Was that worth the cost? I believe it was." The President was quiet for a moment. "So do I, Ambassador. So do I. Earth has made its mark on this galaxy, not as conquerors, not as the strongest or the smartest, but as the ones who stood up when it mattered. I am proud of that. I am proud of you." Years passed. The war became history. The young Valerians who had almost been sent to die became respected warriors, teachers, and leaders. They never forgot that they had been given the gift of time to grow up, time to learn, time to become who they were meant to be. And when they trained the next generation, they told stories. Stories about Commander Jiwoo who refused to follow unjust orders. Stories about Colonel Minho and his soldiers who held an impossible line. Stories about Ambassador Hana, who took the first step. They told these stories not to glorify war, but to teach about courage. Not the courage to fight, but the courage to stand up for what is right. The courage to say no when everyone else says yes. The courage to take the first step, even when you cannot see the path ahead. The galaxy learned something from humanity that year. They learned that the most advanced species is not always the strongest or the smartest. Sometimes it is the one willing to do what is right.